Hi there, welcome to this video from footballbetdata.com. In this video today, what we're going to be looking at is trading scenarios and how you can use data from our data dashboard to help you identify these games. And then I'm going to be showing you a technique that I employ to maximize profit from these games and trade them in running. So first of all, what I'm going to do is navigate to the dashboard itself. Now, I've spoken previously in other videos about the benefit that I see in market value for games with a negative expectancy. Now, what I mean by negative expectancy is backing the draw or backing unders. Most people tend to want to back something with a positive outcome. So they want a certain team to win, or they want to see goals in the game, or corners, or cards, or whatever it might be. So I determined that from my trading experience, this is that there is more value to be had in backing negative expectation outcomes. So like I said, the draw or the under. And in this case, what I do is a combination of both. Now, the outcome that I have created, I've saved in the dashboard itself using the manage selections, or you can navigate to the top menu and use save selection management. It's the same thing. You can go in here. I've called it low goal trade. That can be amended in here. You can add new systems or strategies for easy recall, and then you can go to the dashboard, select them from here, and they populate automatically all your filters. So you don't have to go back in each day or week or whenever it is that you want to do it and have to amend your filter criteria. So I'm going to recall these selections for today now, and also the historic selections, and generate the output. Now, as I've mentioned in other previous videos, we want to circumnavigate the specifics around the filters. These are the filters that I use within my criteria. And if I was to pass that on to other people and say, these are the exact parameters that I'm using, all go away and do the same thing, and you'll generate these outcomes, that's not going to happen, because the market is going to change. People are going to see different results, different outcomes, and then they're going to start saying, well, why am I not getting what you're saying, or why am I getting different from him? And sharing a criteria amongst a mass amount of people is normally bad practice. There is absolutely nothing to be gained by doing that. That will erode any edge that system has or strategy has. I've gone over this numerous times. So what I will say on this is that I'm not using the score prediction element within this specific criteria I'm using myself. So predictions, you might be looking down at some of these games and thinking, well, why are these included in a low goal trade or a draw expected system that you're talking about, when the prediction itself is not indicating that as such in some of these games? That's true, because I'm not using score predictions as part of this criteria. The whole criteria is generated using the odds projections instead. So this system is derived around those factors rather than the score predictions itself, which I've kept completely separate from that. But what I will say is I will use those as a guide or an indicator on top of these selections being generated. And as I've said before in numerous other videos, using data is a great indicator. But specifically with football, you're dealing with 11 versus 11 or 16 versus 16 now with the multi-use subs. There are so many other additional factors that need to be applied before you place any money on a bet or a trade or whatever it may be. Could be injuries, suspensions, players called up on international duty, travel disruptions, weather conditions, different refereeing circumstances, whatever it might be. There are those human elements, and with there being more humans involved, those elements increase and the variables increase alongside with it. So that is worth reiterating. Data can get you so far, and as I'm going to show you here, it can generate a profitable strategy or system, but you also have to understand before you part with any money in future games why something might not go the same way that you expect it to go based on data alone. Okay, so back to the data. So it's generated these selections for me here. And some of you might note that these games in the English leagues are also ones that I've put forward into the draw accumulator, posted on Twitter this morning, and the reasons given are I'm expecting these games to be tight, even though some of them, the score prediction suggests otherwise. That's what I'm expecting based on data, and the data I will show you why that is as we look at some of the historic results in this output. So there's a number of games here today. Whilst trading, what we're looking at is trading in play, and when you trade in play, you're reliant on that market having the sufficient liquidity to be able to get the prices that you need. So some of the lower leagues, looking here through some of these Slovenian, Turkish League 2, there might be liquidity issues around some of these games, English Conference South and North. So trading in play on some of these lower leagues is not as easy as it is on the higher volume, higher market liquidity games, such as the Premiership, and we've got here games from the Italian Serie A, for instance. We've got the Turkish top flight as well, so an English Championship. So those ones will be a totally different market makeup compared to some of the lower games. So the German third Liga here, the liquidity might not be as good as it should be, or allow you to get those trades matched in play. So just looking at the picture historically, I'm going to actually bring up the trading scenario that I use. Okay, so here's the trading criteria that I use. So at 4 to 5 minutes into the game, so it's important to note that I only place, for this football strategy, I only place my trades once the game has kicked off, and as is shown here, 4 or 5 minutes into the game. The reason for that is there are early goals that can happen, so there's nothing more demoralizing than backing a certain scoreline, and within 3 minutes of the game starting, that a goal has gone in and that scoreline is now bust. So I wait 4 to 5 minutes. Generally, the markets that I'm trading into, which I will come on to in a second, do not fluctuate or move that much over the first 4 to 5 minutes of the game. You can generally get similar prices to those offered pre-match, and you eliminate that risk of the early goal affecting your trade. So here's what I do. I look to back 0-0 and the correct score, or the under 0.5 market, whichever offers the better odds or the most liquidity. So as I've said already, some of the leagues that Selections has generated for, the in-play liquidity isn't as high as it should be or needs to be for you to be able to get matched. The market is gappy, so it doesn't always guarantee you a match on those games. And what I would say is, if you put your price in or you try to get matched and it doesn't, and then the odds start tumbling, don't end up chasing and just write that game off. I also back the draw. So again, 4 to 5 minutes into the game, back 0-0, whichever, or the under at 0.5, whichever of those two markets, because it's the same thing, offers the better odds or the most liquidity, and back the draw as well. Now, the way I would split my stakes personally, if we use £10 as the overall unit stake, I do 1/3 on the 0-0 and 2/3 on the draw. So £3.30 roughly on the correct score or under 0.5 market, and then roughly £6.50, £6.60 on the draw. That's what I do 4 to 5 minutes into the game. Then I look to exit around the 24th, 25th minute mark. So depending when I got matched on my original bet, I'd leave that in the market for about 20 minutes. So at this point, assuming the game is still 0-0, I would green up the correct score bet or the under 0.5. So that means whether there's a goal or not in the game, I should have an even profit. Now, depending what your stakes are will depend on that outcome and how much you get, and depending what the odds are. But typically you should be looking, if I put a £3.33 bet into that market and the odds drop down at the rate that they normally do, obviously the starting range is different and those odds will move, but everything will start coming down in play. You should be able to make about 4 times your starting stake, 3 to 4 times. I would remove the liability on the home and away outcome in the match odds market, leaving profit only on the draw. So your home and away would have, instead of greening up, you can green up. That's the option. The option I take is this. So again, I'm explaining what I do. I'm not telling people to go away and do it. I'm advising a technique that I've used that works. I would remove the liability on the home and away. So if the match ends with a home win or an away win, you would be scratch. If it ends in a draw, you would be profitable, but at a lower level than you would be from your original bet that you placed on the 4 to 5 minute mark. So that's all well and good, and that happens probably 90% of the time. I could go away and get the exact figures for the games that I've traded. I don't have it to hand, I will be honest. And then you do nothing else. That is it. You've got a successful trade. If the game finishes in a draw, then you have double bubble. If it ends 3-2, you've already greened up your 0-0 correct score bet, and you have no liability on the match outcome. If there is a goal before the 25th minute, which does happen, I would place an additional bet on the draw. So those draw odds would then go up, normally about 20% compared to where you started at. But again, that can fluctuate. But I would place an additional bet on the draw for the same amount that I placed on the correct score bet. So in this instance, about £3.30, an additional bet on the draw. Of course, your 0-0 and your correct score bet has lost. And then if there's an equaliser in the first half, I would green up the draw market. So I would wait for the market to settle after the equaliser going in, take the cash out, the green up option, and that should ensure that you end up profitable overall. So that includes covering your loss that you would have had on the 0-0 correct score bet. If there's a second half equaliser, so it's still 1-0 at half time, you still have your back bet on the draw, and then there's an equaliser in the second half, I would remove the liability on the home and away outcome, the same as I would do here, and leave a profit on the draw. Okay, so if there's a second half equaliser, leave that profit on the draw. If the game ended up being 3-1, for instance, you would have your overall loss on the correct score, which has already been lost, but you would have no liability on that match outcome. And if it ended up finishing 1-1 or 2-2, 3-3 as a draw, you would have a larger profit because you've had two bets, which you've then removed the liability on the home and away. So that is the technique I use. Like I said, I'm not telling people that's what you have to do, but I'm trying to generate ideas of how to think outside the box. I keep saying about thinking outside the box, and it's good to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, how you can use data and selections that are historically profitable, but then to approach it in a different way to remove any chance of potentially things going against you. So entering the market a few minutes in, of course, I could enter in the 5th minute and there could be a goal in the 8th minute, but I've shown you there what I would do in that instance is then back the draw again and look to get out. There will be games, and there are games in here, where there would be a plethora of goals in the first half, and all of the bets lose. So we have one here, look, with the Maastricht v Breda game, was half-time was 3-1. The goals times, I could download those and show you on screen, but let's just do that actually. I'm assuming there was I didn't actually trade that game, but I'm assuming there was a goal before the 25th minute in that one. Let's just have a look. Let's open it up. So we're looking at the Breda game. Maastricht versus Breda. So there's a goal in the 4th minute. So in fact, in that game, I wouldn't have actually entered the trade there. I would be looking to get in and the market would have been suspended. So in that instance, the 4th minute, I wouldn't have entered. But if we assume that that goal didn't go in and I had placed my trade in the 5th minute, there was a goal in the 11th minute. Okay, so that would have ruled out our correct score bet. I would have re-entered on the draw, and then you can see in the 31st minute, there was the equaliser, what would have been, obviously discounting that 4th minute goal. And what I would have done then is green up, and that would have covered my losses. But you can see here, there are games where there's a goal within that first 24 minutes. In this game here, for instance, so the Groningen-Eindhoven, so I would have entered in the 5th minute, would have looked to green out in the 25th, but there was a goal in the 18th, so I'd have backed the draw, and then you can see there was an equaliser in that game in the 36th minute, so I would have greened up the draw home win, away win market, leaving me profitable whatever the outcome, which would have covered my original stake on the correct score market. And as you can see in this game, actually the home team Groningen did go on and get an 82nd minute winner in that game. But if we look through the scores, the halftime results specifically here, you can see there's a big cluster of 0-0s, which obviously means those games would have been profitable because there wasn't a goal at all. So even discounting the fact we're looking at the 24th, 25th minute mark, even in these games here where we can see there was a goal in the first half, the halftime result was not 0-0. You can see that the time of the first goal is happening after that point that we would have exited. So I'm hoping that that is an indicator for you. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and show you. So if we did nothing at all and we just backed these games using the Betfair exchange price, so you can see here, if we backed all of those games, 2,174 games, if we backed the draw, there would have been 666 with an overall profit of £915.56. So that's 91 point profit at a return of investment yield of 4.21%. So that is backing all of those games as a draw at the closing, the Betfair closing price before kickoff, and doing nothing else. What I'm talking about is maximizing those profits and reducing the losses by the trading technique that I've spoken about. So that's that one market. And then if we look at the unders in the Betfair exchange prices, so there were 219 games that would have finished 0-0, giving it £1,000 and 53 pence profit, so 100 points, and again a yield 4.63%, so a similar yield to the draw. So you can see that historically, backing all of those games has been profitable. Now there is an element of danger of backfitting, although some of these games have been added since I've developed this system at the end of the summer. But obviously there is that element of potential backfashioning. So, you know, you can't look at these historic results and say, well, it's done that over the last 18 months. It's going to do exactly the same in the future, because there's no guarantees on that. It gives you an indication because we've used our filter criteria to hone in on those specific games where we think there's going to be low scoring outcomes, and we think there's likelihood to be draws, and we've demonstrated that historically. And what I'm saying is, use the data to your advantage. We've generated the selections, and the strategy that I've shown you, that has worked and is working for me. It's something I prefer to do, but hopefully it will generate ideas for yourself and whatever you're looking at using the data for, to think, well, actually, how can I use that? And how can I look at the details? So exporting it to Excel, for instance, you've got the goal time data there, so you can go to the next level and look at a game. If there was a game coming up today, for instance, I think it was the Coventry match, Bristol City Middlesbrough. So you can look at that game and say, well, how have Bristol City performed at home so far this season? Have they been letting in any early goals? Have they been scoring early goals? And the same for Middlesbrough. And you can use that extra layer of data to potentially steer you towards or away from trading a game. So I hope the video generates some ideas. That's exactly what it's intended to do. I hope it's useful. And thank you very much for watching.